Apple just dropped its annual App Store fraud numbers, and the scale is really impressive, okay? So check this out. In 2025, the company rejected more than 2 million app submissions for security and fraud violations. They also blocked over 1.1 billion accounts and stopped $2.2 billion in potentially fraudulent transactions. That's some impressive level of fraud here, folks. Here is some additional breakdown of these numbers, okay? So Apple says it terminated 1.1 billion customer accounts and flagged them as fraudulent or abusive before they could do any real damage. Okay, another 700 million account creations were stopped at the door. Now, on the developer side, 146,000 developer accounts got the boot, and 139,000 enrollment attempts were rejected outright. The 2 million rejected app submissions covered a range of issues. You'd see apps trying to smuggle in hidden features after review, apps impersonating real brands in order to phish users, and then also apps with privacy violations or undisclosed data harvesting. Apple also says it caught more than 10,000 illegitimate apps on pirate storefronts that were targeting jailbroken devices and users tricked into sideloading. So, who all is affected by all this? Well, anybody that really has an iPhone or an iPad, which is roughly like a billion plus active users. The fraud Apple is describing here is really kind of contained within everyday apps, okay? Fake banking apps, fake crypto wallets, fake MFA apps. Also, you might see things like copycat games that are stuffed with malware. These things are like bleeding your cards slowly through subscription fraud. But now, this is something that Apple is really kind of claiming as a win for their walled garden, which conveniently lands at the same time the company is fighting regulators in the EU and US over forced sideloading issues. Okay, read into this what you want, but the numbers, they're still really good numbers, and the threat volume, it's real, really, regardless of who's reporting it. So the advice that I can give you after all of this is, well, first, open your iPhone settings and go to subscriptions and audit who's billing you, okay? Also, check your Apple account purchase history and check for charges that you don't recognize. Also, you want to turn on notifications so every transaction pings your device. And if a app asks for contacts or photos or location access that makes no sense for kind of what the app does, well, then deny it immediately and then delete the app, okay? Now, let's move on to our next story of the day, folks. Canadian authorities have arrested the man accused of running the Kimwolf Botnet, which happens to be the largest DDoS-for-hire botnet ever documented. Yeah. So Jacob Butler, age 23, was picked up Wednesday in Ottawa, and he's awaiting extradition to the United States now, where he's charged with aiding and abetting computer intrusions. If convicted, he is really looking at a long time in prison, 10 years, in fact, actually. Now, Butler, known online as Dort, is described by the Justice Department as the principal administrator of the Kimwolf Botnet. And this wasn't a small operation either, folks. Now, Kimwolf is being called one of the most far-reaching DDoS botnets on record, renting out attack capacity to really anybody with crypto and a target. Yeah. Here's how it worked, okay? Kimwolf compromised internet-connected devices like at an incredible scale. We're talking about things like routers, IoT gear, and like poorly secured servers, and then pulled all that bandwidth into this like flood cannon, okay? Paying customers picked a victim, picked a duration, and then let it rip. Yeah. Gaming services, hosting providers, and businesses across the world just got hammered, okay? Some attacked targets like offline for hours, if not days. Yeah, so if your router suddenly got really chatty or started running kind of hot, or maybe your upstream bandwidth tanked at like some random time over the past couple of years, there's a real chance that your device might be part of somebody else's attack. Yeah. Victims on the receiving end included, again, online platforms, small ISPs, and individual streamers who got knocked offline during like mid-Twitch stream. Yeah, all by like Kimwolf customers settling just really kind of petty grievances. Yeah, so the response from law enforcement here was actually coordinated between the FBI and the Canadian police, with the indictment unsealed on Thursday. Now, officials in the investigation into Kimwolf's customers is ongoing, which means anybody who bought attacks through the service, you probably shouldn't be sleeping well right about now. Yeah. So what should you do? Okay, here's my advice. Okay, check your router firmware and update it. Okay, it needs to be updated. If it's more than 5 years old and is no longer getting patches, you just need to throw it away. Okay. Other things, change the default passwords, okay? That's kind of a no-brainer as well. You shouldn't do that. Also, disable remote management unless you really actually need it. And most people do all those sorts of configurations locally, so disable it. It's unnecessary. And also, audit any sort of IoT device on your network that you've never logged into. That's how botnets grow, okay? Let's move on to our last story of the day, folks. Here's a nice little update on Mythos, however you want to pronounce it. Anthropic's AI found tens of thousands of serious vulnerabilities in 30 days. Yeah, so your patching backlog, oh my God, it's going to get way worse, folks. So if you weren't aware, Project Glasswing is Anthropic's defensive security program that's built on top of Claude's Mythos preview LLM. It went live about a month ago, and since then it has flagged over 10,000 high or critical severity bugs across open source projects, vendor code bases, and internal partner reviews. Yeah. And the model isn't just spitting out theoretical findings either. I mean, a meaningful chunk came with working proof of concepts with attached. I mean, I can attest to this. Okay, I have personally met people with Mythos access, and they tell me about how absolutely terrifying this is. And here's where it's going to get really ugly, folks, okay? The breakdown shows roughly 70% of these are in software that's already shipped, already deployed, and already in production somewhere. So many sit in dependencies that you don't even know you have running, okay? Yeah, severity averages land in the 8-point-something CVSS range with a long tail of straight 10s. Yeah, exploit complexity for a big slice of them is actually fairly low too. Many with no authentication, no user interaction, network reachable. Yeah, all of this is really terrifying. So let's talk about who all is affected, okay? That would be everyone. Yes. Everyone is affected here. The findings span everything: web frameworks, container runtimes, networking gear, firmware, and a surprising number of identity and authentication libraries. Yeah. Anthropic has been really quiet as far as coordinating disclosure with the maintainers, but the volume is breaking the traditional 90-day window, which some projects are getting hit with 50 plus reports at once. Yeah, maintainers of these code bases can't triage these sorts of issues that fast. Yeah, vendors also, they're not going to be able to ship the patches that fast either, but the attackers who can absolutely run models like this now absolutely can take advantage of this. Yeah, so what do we do with all this information now? Well, first, I'd pack your bug out bag, but no, seriously. Assume your software bill of materials is already out of date, okay? You should assume it's out of date, rebuild it this week, okay? Second, watch for any sort of unusual spike in CVE assignments over the next 30 to 60 days. That's the disclosure wave landing, okay? Third, prioritize any sort of network facing or no authentication requirement, because that's where proof of concepts cluster, okay? Fourth, push your vendors for a statement on whether they've been notified under the Glasswing program. So yeah, check your inventory now, okay, folks? The tsunami of patches is coming, so brace yourself, okay? All right, well, that wraps up today's stories, folks. I know it was a lot. This is Andy Thompson signing off.